All right, very cool. So, my name's Mike. I'm here with Walt.
Hey guys.
We're two dive professionals and two health and fitness enthusiasts as well. And the reason we want to talk to y'all about the stuff that we're talking about today is just because we see a lot of issues with scuba. I mean, scuba training is one thing, and that is on the way of being improved and improved. But the fitness and nutrition and breathing and all these other like the mechanics of the human behind the diving is what we want to work to improve because there's just so many dangers that come into play with heart attacks, poor mental awareness, inability to get back up the ladder, all these things that we'll touch on that they cause unnecessary issues added on top of it. So we want to start with improving our body, and I'm going to let Walt take it away from here.
Hey guys. Well, again, like you said, I'm Walt, and I'm a dive master. I'm also a fitness professional, been a fitness professional for about 14 and a half years. And just getting into diving about, I don't know, maybe roughly 5-6 years ago, I started to look at the elements of fitness as it relates to diving, and what's necessary to be a really good diver, but to be a healthy diver. And I started taking a look at a number of our brothers and sisters in the same industry, and just kind of seeing just how their own physical makeup. Many of them look fit. Some of them don't look fit. And what we really have to look at is what's going on the inside. And if you look at someone's diet, you look at when you look at someone, how often they exercise, or perhaps they don't exercise, and maybe they're sedentary. That's really what's going to tell us, how fit they are. I found a course, and a really amazing lady who created a course called Scuba Fit. And she led me on a journey to really understand just the relation between the two. And so what I'm just going to do is I'm going to talk about a lot of what Scuba Fit brings, and the elements of fitness within scuba diving. But I also just want to talk about her just for a quick second. She is actually a fitness professional. Her name is, like I said, her name is Gretchen Ashton. She lives with her family out on the West Coast. And basically, she decided to partner with another a scuba professional, in order to bring this amazing course together. One of the things that I love about what she said, and we'll talk about, is the life expectancy of a diver. A diver of 20 years old, certified diver of 20 years, potentially has more than 50 years of scuba diving left in them. During this diving lifespan, many biological changes will occur. Beginning in early adulthood, all body systems begin to lose capacity. Muscle strength decreases, cardiovascular capacity diminishes, and body composition changes. Those are the three that I really want to talk about today: composition, strength, and endurance. And if you understand why strength is so important, or even endurance, or your composition, let's just take it from the perspective of carrying 50-pound oxygen tanks. Take it from the perspective of carrying all the equipment that you have on your body, going across, maybe walking 20, 30 feet to a particular location where you're going to mount up, set your dive gear on the boat, get everything ready. Not only that, though, your endurance to get from the shop to the boat and not be out of breath. And at the same time, be able to have a composition where you can put everything on you, put your wetsuit or your dry suit on you without feeling constricted. BMI, I want to kind of touch on this just for a quick second, but BMI and composition are different. Your body mass index is different than just your composition. Your BMI will give you an indication of what the composition is like, but your BMI, you could have a BMI of a healthy man or a healthy woman and have a higher BMI and still be considered healthy. On a normal scale, you might be considered overweight or obese, but that they don't take into account the amount of muscle that you might actually have, and healthy fat. And so you have to, because we can get into that later on, but composition, BMI, totally different. So I want to just clear up that misnomer. Looking at physical fitness, the ultimate physical fitness recommendation for scuba divers is to be in excellent health. free from disease, medical conditions, and injury. And as a diver goes through life, it is often difficult to maintain that clean slate. It is important for divers to know just how to become and remain physically fit, prevent injury and illness, and rehabilitate conditions from high blood pressure, diabetes, heart problems, and obesity. Some of the things that Mike even touched on in the beginning. A minimum of 60 minutes of moderate physical exercise is recommended for everyone every day. That's across the board. It doesn't matter if you're male, female, doesn't matter what age you are, a minimum of 60 minutes. Regular physical activity, we're talking cardiorespiratory fitness, decreases the risk of cardiovascular disease. So cardio, and there are, if you go to the American College of Sports Medicine, there's a different guideline there for you. It's anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes, but that's all depending on the type of cardio that you're doing. But the reason why cardio is so important is that it increases your VO2 max. And this is a lot of, I know, things that Michael talked about just when it comes to breathing, but this is your capacity, your lung capacity for oxygen. And a lot of times, if your VO2 is not at the prime level that it should be, when you're out there, perhaps even underwater, or you're swimming at the surface, you're going to be gassed and you're huffing and puffing because you're trying to get in this oxygen, you're trying to get oxygen in and CO2 out, and you're having to do it at such a high rate because the heart is working overtime. The heart is interesting. I want to make this distinction. When you create really good strength in the body, there's a certain amount of density. Let's say if you're someone like me, I'm more of my background is in bodybuilding primarily. And so what I've done is I've built a lot of muscle over time. Well, so is my heart. And the left ventricle of my heart has I don't know, hopefully it still does, but it has a pretty thick wall of muscle. So every time that my heart, boom, pumps out blood, oxygenated blood, it does it really powerfully, right? But it's a small chamber. However, someone like, I don't know, we could take like a Lance Armstrong, whose muscle is primarily cardio based. He has a very thin wall, but he has a much larger capacity. So when blood flows into that left ventricle, swells up, and then boom, it's a powerful force out through the rest of the body. Okay, so that's the difference. So what you want to do as a scuba diver is you want to have a combination of both. You want to have a pretty large capacity of blood that's going to come in with good oxygenated muscle that you train, cardio, but then also you want to have a pretty good density in that chamber wall, so that there's a powerful push as well. So strength, endurance, we're talking type 1, type 2 type muscle. Type 2 muscle, strength, that's less oxygenated muscle. Type 1 muscle is oxygenated muscle. Okay, we'll go over that one more time. Type 1 is what we call slow twitch. Okay, that's more cardio based. Type 2, that is anaerobic. Ana meaning lack of oxygen. That's going to be type 2, either type 2A or type 2X. Type 2A is your strength and hypertrophy. Type 2X is what's considered the power. So a lot of Olympic athletes have that more of the type 2X. It's a very quick movement. There's not a lot of room for holding on to and then pressing, because they're trying to get the movement done and over with. That's all they have. They only have a certain amount of oxygen capacity, but they've got incredible strength in order to get it up. And so, yeah. So anyway, so moving on, I want to go into just a little bit of overall body strength, and then I'm going to pass it back on over to Mike here. There are many aspects of scuba diving require good overall body strength, while other aspects require increased levels of physical endurance. There is research that provides examples of importance of combining overall body strength and endurance for diving. Typically, strength is gained through high intensity, low repetition work periods, and endurance is gained through low intensity, high repetition work periods. To increase the strength and endurance of muscles used in diving, they must be exercised at home or in a gym with movements that are similar to the way that they're used. I want to explain that a little bit. So when it comes to strength, You've probably seen this many times in different programs where you'll see something that has 3 sets, 12 reps, and then, or 10, 3 sets, 10 reps. That's sort of the typical layout of a strength program. It's a little higher load that you're lifting, that you can lift for about 10 reps, anywhere from I would say 8 to 10 reps, 3 to 4 sets, strength based. Anything that's higher than that, as far as your reps are concerned, that means your weight or your load is going down. So let's take, for instance, and that's the reason. And the reason is because you want to do it at a faster pace. You want to be able to do it and sustain that movement, even though you can feel acid beginning to burn throughout the body. You want to be able to sustain that for a longer period of time. The more you do it, the body recovers and you gain endurance every single time. Believe it or not, even while you're working. After your first set, the body is repairing and recovering from what you just did, so that you are just a tad bit more endured for the next go round. I always tell people, just be ready, because the next time that we do this, or the next time you do it, you're going to be so much more endured. You're not going to feel this way again. I remember the first time that I was going through my diving, my dive master, and I hadn't been diving in a while, and I knew I was going to need some time to get in there and swim and get my heart right, get my lungs right. My muscles were not ready for it at all. We got in there. I'm always ready to swim, though. I want to say that I'm always ready to swim. When I got in there, though, I would say the first couple of dives, I was sucking air. A lot of air. And I remember just taking in these big, huge breaths, because just my swim strokes and all, my body wasn't there. After about, I would say probably the 8th or 9th dive throughout that week, I could feel my endurance getting so much better. I could feel, I knew that I could sustain a little bit more, a little harder work, a little higher regimen of work within in the deeper levels that we were going, and I wasn't taking in as much oxygen. And that happened again. That the more I did it, the better I became. That was almost 5 weeks of just straight training. Well, guess what? The body changes throughout. My strength, I definitely decreased body fat during that time, because I was eating properly, but I was also doing the work. My strength level, I would say, probably stayed around the same, but my endurance is what really increased the most. And it's because of just a high rate of work, lower loads of weight, but I'm doing it over and over and over and over. That's how you really increase your endurance. And cardio has so much to do with that as well. Your VO2 plays a huge role in how well you're able to increase endurance and sustain that and move forward. So strength, composition, and endurance. Those are 3 primary components that Scuba Fit really goes into, and I just wanted to give an overview really of what those mean and why they're so important. And certainly we're definitely going to go into more of how they are related to scuba as we move forward. But I just wanted to deliver and express some of that information. And yeah, I want to pass it back on over to Mike. And so we're going to talk more about the breathing, and I'm excited to hear.
Sweet, man. Dude, that bit about the lungs and the ventricles, that's something I'll have to learn a little bit more about. That's cool.
It's pretty incredible. Yeah.
Right on. So yeah, I have seen a lot of what you're talking about in the other, with the poor composition, the poor strength, the poor endurance. And it is a very, I don't want to put my youth on a pedestal. Like the average scuba diver is a middle-aged gentleman, and I've spent a lot of times on boats and a good amount of time teaching new people how to dive. And the things I would see on boats were just people that were huffing and puffing after putting on their wetsuits, struggling to get in the gear. They seemed to kind of lose a bit of focus on what the task is that they were doing, and then were focused on kind of rushing and getting in, struggling to balance on and put on their fins. And at the point of about to get in the water, kind of, I have a background in sports, playing collegiate rugby, where like I wouldn't want to go into the game huffing and puffing and breathing hard. I want to be a little maybe warmed up, a little ready to go, but with everything under control. So that was kind of the things that started to lead me into realizing something needs to be taught. And I also grew up asthmatic, so had breathing was definitely not my forte. Endurance was not my forte. It was a big issue on the rugby pitch until I kind of learned about how the respiratory system works. And I'm going to go into those dynamics and the functions and the science of it just a little bit. But with understanding that and a little bit of practice, it skyrocketed me to being one of the fittest people on the team. And right around that time, I was learning to breathe. So this is always, or I was learning to scuba dive. So this has always been really ingrained into what I do, which has gotten me out of a lot of trouble. We touched on the heart attacks being one of the biggest killers in scuba diving. And as we start to breathe more and faster, and then our heart is pumping faster. And, that's kind of leads these people to overwork themselves. So we want to discuss ways to combat that. Another thing you touched on was being an air hog. I've heard that so many times of, why do I go through my air so fast? I'm up way before everybody else. And then the last one is kind of the buoyancy. Something that I see is an issue a lot is people not really having good control of their buoyancy, and maybe they understand that breathing is buoyancy, maybe they don't, but either way, they're not able to fully utilize that main skill of what scuba diving is. And the fun part, because when we can control our buoyancy, our breathing, then we can really be in the moment and take into account like, whoa, what is going on right now? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So those are just some of the dangers. And like the benefits is everything on the flip side of that. We can be in control and be present in the moment, to be controlling our breathing and be like, wow, like I'm really remembering what's happening on this dive versus like feeling like I'm being rushed through it.
Yeah.
I can have better control of my buoyancy, like pin perfect control of my buoyancy. So anytime I'm about to crush into that reef, I just pop back up. I can extend the length of the time of one of my cylinders. And as long as I'm in the no stop limits, can stay there for a little bit longer. And then with control of our breathing, it also avoids overexertion. So we can avoid heart attacks, and we can work our body to the best capacity, which is the cool part. And some of the ways that we do that, this is going to bring us back to maybe our open water class, where we talk about that carbon dioxide is actually our stimulus to breathe, not a lack of oxygen. It is very rare, unless we've been holding our breath for extended periods of time, like a free diver, that our oxygen levels are going to dip down. It's oftentimes that feeling of the carbon dioxide or the carbon dioxide buildup is telling our brain that, hey, we need to breathe, we need to do this, which is great. It's a good like safety mechanism. That way, this will kick in, which is not dangerous, a lot quicker than my oxygen levels dropping too low, which is cool. But if we don't practice with that, then we start to get, ooh, I have this crazy urge to breathe. And that's when I start going, and that's when the heart starts pumping faster. And that's when we can risk the heart attacks or breathing through our air faster, and then get into a whole nother other series of issues. So we want to make friends with that carbon dioxide. And actually, we can increase the levels of what we can tolerate. But when we understand how to control it, like, okay, if I have an urge to breathe, that doesn't mean breathe in more and quicker. That's actually just going to make the problem worse. But if I can slow down my breathing, really extend my exhales, and then I can come back to center with that. This is something I saw a lot on the scuba pitch, was I would run around so much that the rugby pitch. I would run around so much that I thought I was like about to pass out, which is not what you want, or not what I wanted when there's men flying around trying to tackle me. So like, once I understood, like, okay, don't take in more breaths when I'm out of air, but rather like settle my breathing and slow it down. And it kind of gets to this point of like a moment of suffocation. And then once I can return back quicker, and that gets like, as they call, repeated sprintability, or in our case, like just returning back to our levels of proper breathing. But that's, again, something I get into a little bit more in some deeper in-depth conversations, is how to maintain that or reestablish that relationship with carbon dioxide. But for now, we need to know like that is our buddy. And then I want to look at just functional breathing patterns on land and underwater. Obviously, the big change is that we're breathing through our mouth underwater versus our nose, which is okay. But I mean, big benefit if you're just a really recreational scuba diver looking into the full face mask to breathe through the nose. It is a world of difference, but not for every situation, of course. So yeah, some of them, I always tell people to breathe LSD, which obviously perks up some ears in the open water class. But what I mean by that is light, slow, and deep. So light being really gentle versus, you know what, that a quick, a harsh breath, a big, heavy breath is more apt to come into the shoulders, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the deep section, but we want to be able to be more in control of it. And which is hard for some people the first time breathing off of, you know, basically a tube or a straw, is like kind of sucking that very gently. And that also benefits with, we're not getting as much of dry mouth. We're not drying out the mouth if we're taking softer breaths. And then I want to get into the next one being the slow, which is the biggest benefit of if we're breathing light and slow, that's how we extend our air. Because every time, if I'm breathing in a lot quickly, then I'm going through the air quicker and quicker. If I breathe in slower, then I'm maybe not even, I'm taking in maybe the same amount of breathing, although as we understood, we don't need as much oxygen as we think. But if I'm extending that, then I'm extending my time underwater. If I'm extending my exhale, I'm actually helping myself relax, and I'm extending my time underwater because I'm not using that air that is in the tank. Exhales are like free time underwater. A good breathing pattern is about 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. If you want to extend that a little bit more underwater, because most of the time we're not working too hard and we're really conscious of it. But that gets us to about 6 breaths per minute, which is a lot slower than most people are doing at about 15 to 20. And that's sometimes even at rest is the fast breathing. So that's going to drop down that air way quicker. And obviously, as we start to work, then we may be using a little bit more. So we really want to ingrain this pattern into like our psyche. It's like, I'm always breathing light, slow, and deep. Even if my mind's racing, I'm having to kick to stay somewhere, I'm trying to like hold something or grab onto somebody, at least my breathing pattern is ingrained. And it's always going to go light, slow, and deep. So that in a moment of panic, it doesn't get worse because my air is dropping down faster. And now the last bit after the light, slow is deep. So that's what I was talking about. And another key function of functional breathing is into the diaphragm. You know, I used to think that a deep breath was here, where the shoulders raise and the belly, as they say, or the diaphragm would go in on an inhale and out on an exhale. But this is completely backwards and as they call paradoxical. But really what we want is on an inhale, this expands, and on an exhale, it contracts. This diaphragm actually goes 360 degrees, so out here too. Here and in the lower back here. It's a lot more relaxing because we're not having this pressure on the top of our chest, because when we breathe with our diaphragm through our lungs or our mouth, then I'm able to pulls down and it fills the lungs with air, and then it circulates it all back. Instead of just coming here, it's coming here, which eliminates the dead air where we're actually cycling through, getting all that blood and oxygen from the bottom and cycling that, instead of just using the old first in, first out method. We're using the old last in, first out, LIFO. It also, if we can make bigger use of our lungs, and we have bigger buoyancy compensators in our lungs versus having just this small part. And that's a big issue, is when people aren't utilizing their full lungs, they don't have as much control of their breathing or of their buoyancy. If they can't take a huge breath in and a massive breath out, that's when you have full control. If not, then it's kind of like you only have a limited amount of steering on your steering wheel. Like you can't fully rotate it left or right. You can't fully go up or down. You're kind of right in here. Obviously, weighting being perfect, which is a totally different conversation. So those are some pretty simple things. Obviously, they take a little bit of practice, and I can give some I can share some practice with anyone interested. But for now, we want to be focusing on understanding the role of carbon dioxide and making new friends with it, again, with practice. And then these same things, breathing light, slow, and deep. So light, gentle, slow, at a slower pace, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Do you like numbers? And deep into the diaphragm. We combine those functional breathing patterns to create a better relationship with carbon dioxide. Then that is in the back of our minds. That's going to be what we turn to in moments of panic or stress, is that at least the breathing doesn't make it worse, which is fantastic, because then we can focus on being relaxed. And that's all we want to do, right? Is have some fun and be safe about it. So those are my thoughts on the breathing. And I think it ties in perfectly with the fitness and the strength and the endurance that Walt, you were talking about. Obviously, we get more into that with practice, is implementing the two together. But what I really like about this conversation is just kind of highlights how we can become better human beings. And I like that one of the best ways to encourage us to become better human beings is by seeing how much time and I guess time, or like how good of an experience we can have underwater. Like, that's cool. That our evolution is going back into the water.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something, to the point that you made about the LSD, and just the practicing of utilizing your diaphragm that's an exercise in itself. There's a, and I have a, my background in theater. I think I've told you about that. We used to practice a lot of our exercises that we would do were deal with the breath, because it was all about projection, but then also being able to deliver a line on one single breath, without having to, and this is what you want. There's something to be said. There's a correlation and something to be said about the way you explain that, taking one deep breath in and then being able to extend it out, for a certain period of time, and having control. One of the things that I tell a lot of my clients too, especially when they're going through and they've just finished maybe 2 or 3 sets, and the breath is oh, just feel like I'm out of breath. Stand back, take a deep breath in, hold it. Now you control and let it out very nice and slow. Do it again. Instead of the breath having control of you, you have control over the breath. It's something very psychological about that. And then the heart rate begins to drop as well. The heart rate begins to, settle down. And so it's I really like the LS. I've never heard it put that way before, but I like it. Something else I'll tell you that really helps with helping to get to that place is having a good resting heart rate. Did you know that this is very uncommon, but I mentioned Lance Armstrong, but Lance Armstrong had a resting heart rate at one time of 41. I think it was 37 or 40, anywhere from 37 to 41. Resting heart rate at 37 to 41. Average for just a normal healthy person is usually anywhere from 60 to 65, maybe even 70, So to have a resting heart rate, that means, based on like what you just talked about, taking in and out, having a breath of, I think, what did you say? You said anywhere from 6 to 8 breaths within a minute.
4 to 6.
4 to 6.
Because resting breathing rate is also just as important as the heart rate, actually.
Yeah. So I mean, it's remarkable. It's remarkable but that just comes with training, and it comes with practice. But there's a lot that can be done even just with those breathing techniques and just training yourself to breathe outside. And I know you're going to talk about that a lot more, by breathing outside the water. Yeah. That's awesome.
That is beautiful. I love how it lines up so well.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Cool. So I appreciate everybody for checking it out. If you want to get in contact with us, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
You can contact me, I guess via email. I have a number that two people can call. It's an outside line. So, but my email address is, I guess we'll use that one. It's Black Manta Universal. Yeah, Black Manta Universal at gmail.com. That's sort of my official diving, all things nautical and beach and all that stuff. So Black Manta Universal at gmail.com. And then certainly if they want to contact me directly, contact me at 469-215-7318. I have no problem at all too. Even the crazies. Fine.
I'll call you, man.
Right. Good. All
right. Nice. That's funny. I actually so I use Dive Sea Monkeys.
Okay. Yeah.
At gmail.com.
Nice. Awesome. I think everybody, you have to, I had someone who's no longer in my life used to complain so much about different email addresses and like, what are these all for? Like, you don't understand. You have different aspects, different things that you're doing. You want to separate. And so I think it's important. I think you have to. So yeah, it's good. It's good.
Awesome. Cool. I'll cut the recording here. I appreciate everyone for listening.
Take care.